Hello, I'm Rick Stivers of YoungMartin'sReels, and today we're going to be working on this Daiwa M80. I found this reel in a tackle box a few weeks ago, and at the time you couldn't push the button in, you couldn't wind the handle, you couldn't do anything with it except sit there and look at it. So I had to take it apart, and I'll go through it with you and we'll show you what I found and what we needed to do to fix it. Okay, first thing we're going to do is take the handle off. The next thing we're going to do is take this cover off. With those off, that now brings us down to this rotor. We'll unscrew the nut off the end of the rotor. And slide the rotor off. Okay, that brings us down to the spool, which is held in by this clip. Pop off the clip, and out slides the spool. This metal plate that you see in here right now is the clicker and combination clicker and drag mechanism. This little part right here rides on these detents in the spool and provides the clicking sound when the drag is activated, and this portion right here goes into this slot on this screw for the drag mechanism. Now, if you're familiar with a lot of the Zebco reels, you'd think now that this would just slide out, but it doesn't. And what we found out is that you have to unscrew the drag mechanism screw on it all the way out. Pull the screw out. Now you can pull out the drag wheel, remove it. With that removed, now this assembly will come out. And what I found when I got to this point was that this axle shaft was completely frozen up inside here. And what I ended up having to do was take the nut and put it on, douse it all down real good with WD-40, leave the nut standing a little proud of the shaft, and then take the handle of a screwdriver and tap it down in there until it started to break free. And it took about 20 shots for it to start to break free. Once it was free a little bit, I was able to go ahead and wiggle it back and forth until I was able to slide it out. The axle shaft had a lot of corrosion all over it, but even more so was the inside of the case here. And what I ended up having to do was take my screwdriver, this particular one as a matter of fact, and slide it down in there and scrape all that corrosion out of this plastic body. Once I had that out, then the axle shafts slid in and out easily again. But until then, there was no way it was going to happen. Even after I had cleaned the axle shaft, without that cleaning out that center of the case, it wasn't going to go in. Okay, we've got the axle shaft out. Now we're going to remove the main gear. With the main gear, now that just leaves us with our anti-reverse dog. And notice that the larger side of the anti-reverse dog goes down on this inside right here. See right here? This pivots back and forth. So if you pull this off, you need to know how to put it back, and that larger side goes closer to the axle shaft. Once that was done, time to spray it all down. Scrub it good. Inside, outside, every which direction. With it all sprayed down good, wipe it off. That left us the back side of the case here, and when you remove this, it has a tendency to want to just fall, the button wants to just fall out. So go ahead, you can let it fall out, that's fine. Clean up the inside of this case, which I did. It had a lot of old grass and moss and everything else inside it. Clean that out. Then once that's done, this button, you can it's easier to do it this way. Bring it in from the back side, set it up in there. Okay, maybe it's not easier that way. Take it, put it inside. There's two little tabs up here. Make sure that you pivot it forward. If you don't pivot it forward, those two tabs won't fall into the slots that they're made for. Okay? Once you pivot it forward, then it'll drop into those slots, and then you can slide it back, and it will stay just where you want it. Leave it over to the side till you're ready for it. Next part we're going to clean up is going to be the main gear. Take the main gear, spray it, scrub it down good. Now some of you may wonder why I chose to take these apart and clean them up and then come back and film later. Well, when I first started doing this, I had no intention of shooting these videos. But after doing enough of them, I decided, hey, somebody else out there might want to know how these parts go together. And so I decided to start shooting the videos. So that gives me an opportunity with all the reels that I do have currently. We can go through them, take them back apart, show you what I found when I took them apart, how to clean them up, and what to do from there. Now some people might ask, why do I use WD-40? WD-40 is just a good cleaner. I wouldn't use it to try to lubricate a reel, but it's really good as a cleaner. Wipe down your clicker plate and drag. Okay, that's got everything pretty well clean except the bottom of this, and it's clean, and the axle shaft. So we're going to work on this axle shaft now. When I first pulled this out, it would not move. You could not get this gear to slide on this shaft. And so, but I spent a lot of time. I took it, set it up with a pair of vice grips. Now, I set them open so that they didn't grab hold, but I took the vice grips, opened them up enough for the gear to just sit inside there, and then I was able to sit and tap it on top of the spring over and over and over until it started with spraying WD-40 on it until it come clean. Now you don't want to clamp that down hard enough to grab hold of the shaft because it'll mar it. It's just soft steel. So set it to where it's just enough to slide in without grabbing hold of it any. Okay, like that. And then just tap it. Spray, tap, until you break it free. Once you do, keep going until you get all the lubricants off, all the dirt off, and all the corrosion, and then lubricate it very well. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is we're going to go back and install this shift dog. Now if you remember, I told you when you took it out to pay attention to how it came out. You've got the larger hooked side over here, you've got the smaller side over here. You want to take that, there we go, and it slides right into that hole. Then you're going to want to take a little bit of reel grease. I don't care what brand you use, that really doesn't matter, as long as it's made for fishing reels. And we'll take and put just a little bit of grease on that shift dog. There. Now it helps it slide a little better, keeps it from getting corroded and binding up. Next, we'll do the same thing. By the way, we inspected this main gear. We checked the shaft, make sure there was no gouging or anything on the shaft. We made sure all the teeth on the anti-reverse were good. We turned it over on the other side. We inspected each of the teeth on this side to make sure none of them were chipped or worn. They were all good. So we're going to take it now and apply just a little bit of grease along the teeth of the gear. You don't want a whole lot. You don't want to clog reel up full of grease. You just want a little bit, just enough to lubricate the teeth on those gears. Once that's done, now I use real oil on this shaft. And the reason I do, a lot of people will just slather it down with grease. I don't do that because I've found that if I do that, it tends to want to make the reel feel sluggish. So on all my shafts, I use real oil, not real grease. Okay, slide it in. It's in good shape, it's in position. Now we are ready for the main axle, or the axle shaft. We're going to put some grease here because this is not a rotational thing. This will rotate, but the grease won't prevent it from rotating. The grease is there for where it slides up and down this way. Where it rotates is on this shaft right here. That's where I use the oil. Just a little bit of oil. And if you do this on an annual basis, you won't get corrosion inside, and it should hold up for a long time, many years to come. Okay, here we go. Make sure the axle shaft engages with the teeth on the main gear, and now you want to put a little bit of grease on the axle shaft gears. There we go. That's ready to go. That's fixed. And it's ready to go back in the case. Remember, make sure your button's lined up. Set this inside your case, slide it back inside. There you go. Once that's in, you can take your drag wheel and slide it back in here. Now it's going to want to tend to fall down, so don't just drop it straight in. Lay it on its side like this. Slide it in until you can just look down inside and see it, and then take your screw, your drag screw, put it back in, and begin to screw it back in. Don't force it if it's not lined up. Wiggle it around a little bit. If you have to, pull it back out and realign the gear one more time. Also, if you don't put your thumb or something to hold the drag wheel, it will tend to just spin around with the screw. So screw it in until it's almost flush, but not quite. Stop at that point. Now you're ready. Now you're ready to put your clicker drag plate back in. You'll notice how it fits. It has this little tab right here. Well, that tab fits right inside that screw head, just like that. Once it's in, you're going to want to put some grease along it. Put some grease along this shaft, like so, and take your spool, slide your spool back on. All right. Once the spool's back on, also note, I didn't talk about this before. This washer right here is hard. It's a hard washer, but it's a drag washer. Okay. So your drag is actually operating with this bottom right here sliding against this plate, and then this washer here sliding against here. That is the drag system in this. All right. You set that in. You put your clip back on, if we've got it down in there far enough. Nope, we don't have it in far enough yet. So let's go ahead, screw this down some more. There we go. Got that screw to go down deeper, and do not get it under and over. Make sure both sides of the clip are on the top, and pop the clip on. Okay, now it's not going to come out. Feel your drag, see if you got any drag. Right now we don't have drag, but we'll adjust that in a minute. Okay, now we take our rotor. Rotor's going to need, remember we cleaned this up a little bit. We're going to put just a dab of grease inside there. You can use oil, whichever one you choose. And put this on here. Add a little bit there. Now your rotor's ready to slip back on. Remember, it's got, if you want, look at your rotor, it's got a D-shaped hole in it. and the D shape, the flat side of the D goes against the flat side of the shaft. There, like that. Take your nut, start tightening your nut down, push the button, which will extend your axle shaft the rest of the way out. Tighten it down. Run your line through your cap cover. Okay, it's got the cap on good. Now all we've got is the handle. Put the handle on. Don't lose the star washer on your screw. Screw it back down. Tighten the screw and okay. Notice how easy that drag is. Okay, so we're going to tighten the drag. That's tighter. That's real tight. Okay, here we go. That is the tear down, lubrication, and cleaning of a Daiwa M80 closed face fishing reel.